Working Cows Podcast, episode 390. This episode is brought to you by C90 Ocean Minerals.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the Understanding Ag Studios, and this episode is brought to you by C90 Ocean Minerals. C90 Ocean Minerals, the leading mineral and trace element sea salt for your herd, is now available nationwide at Tractor Supply Company. We're excited to bring the incredible benefits of our mineral-rich sea salt to more farmers and ranchers across the country. To find your closest Tractor Supply location, visit us at c-90.com/tractor today. Trouble with flies? Select stores also carry C90 mineral salt with garlic for fly control. Learn more today at c-90.com/tractor. Very excited to be joined today by Joshua and Tara Dukart. They are holistic management educators from the Bismarck area in North Dakota, and they are also going to be teaching a 3-day Regenerate school in Pierre, South Dakota, coming up in November, and so wanted to talk to them about that, get the word out about it, give them opportunity to share kind of some of the outline and some of the ways that they approach holistic management education a little bit differently. If you're interested in the school, it is being hosted by the South Dakota Grassland Coalition, and so you can go to sdgrass.org and find it there under the events tab, get registered. South Dakota Grassland Coalition's covering the vast majority of the expenses for it, so it's a very reasonable school for you and your family to come and take part in. So Joshua, Tara, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Josh, we had you on a long time ago to talk about the to-don't list, I think, is what we talked about on that episode. But Tara's first time, so appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. And I think it's always good to get both people in the room at the same time because I think that God wired us differently as men and women, and we both have different perspectives and things to offer. And I think that helps us to be more successful when we have both voices present. Has that been true in your experience?
Definitely. I would say that really resonates with us, and it resonates with the people that we speak to. A lot of people approach us and express their gratitude and appreciation that we're willing to be so transparent in our roles and how we navigate the tricky conversations and the decisions and his strengths and my strengths and our weaknesses and how we can help hold each other accountable to our values. And so what you mentioned, Clay, is exactly what we're seeing and experiencing in our own lives and in the people that we have the opportunity and the privilege to work with and speak to.
And not only how we speak and what we share with others, but it keeps our connection close. And Tara used a really key word there, accountable. We're not just spouses and we're not just married, but we're business partners as well. And when you put that into the same space, then all of a sudden things like accountability and leadership and all of the pieces that come along with running a profitable business that, yes, is profitable, yes, it regenerates the land, but also needs to fit our quality of life. And part of that for us is being able to do things together. And so we're doing that very intentionally.
You're fresh off of a part of a 6-day school in Texas. What were kind of some of the breakthroughs that you saw there? How did you see people kind of responding to the content that was being shared?
It is always such a humbling experience to watch people have breakthroughs. And so many of the events that we have the opportunity to be a part of, I think the thing that never gets lost on us is how many people admit that, someone in their life has worked to tell them something. a change that they could make, or a way to do things differently, or to have a different attitude. But they can't always hear that from somebody that they love. But to be able to watch them come to a school and say in front of the group, you know what, my mom has been trying to tell me, but I didn't realize it. I couldn't accept it until now. Or my husband couldn't hear it from me, or my father-in-law, or whatever that relationship dynamic is. They can receive the information from someone else in the school or from one of the facilitators or educators. And when it really settles in for someone and it becomes something that is a pivotal moment for them, and they can make those kinds of changes, it's just a beautiful thing to watch.
One of the other things that I notice as well is when people make the shift from feeling or believing that they're a victim in their situation to moving towards, no, I'm actually empowered to do something about this, and at least some of this is on me.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw this shift with multiple people in various generations, not just an older generation or a younger generation, but hey, if I take this one step towards them and adjust my perspective on this particular item, it actually will invite the other person that they are dealing with or trying to improve a relationship with, and brings them to the table in a different manner. And watching people make that shift and own it is really, really incredible to watch, because we don't take the approach of telling people what to do or how to do something, or that, hey, I think you're mistaken and you need to fix this type of approach. It's very much asking questions, and sometimes asking the hard questions. Like Tara just talked about, some of the realization or the mental shift or the mindset shift that people have is based on what questions they get asked, but also who they get asked that question from. And that's the role as facilitators that we really, really take a lot of pride in and work really hard at. So watching people have those breakthroughs where it becomes their idea and it is owned by them in the end, they actually get pretty darn excited to go work on this thing when they leave.
I know that there's an enemy in this world, a spiritual enemy, and I think that he likes to keep people in bondage and painted into corners, and I think that's what the victim mentality becomes, is this place where people just can't get past that. They can't get free from that. And so I think that is something that we should recognize, that's what's happening.
I was just going to suggest that I agree completely, Clay. And one of the advantages to recognizing that is we realize that the enemy is not you, or it's not me, or it's not the people that are having the conflict. It's actually in between, that there is an acting force that is causing this. And when we can team up together in realizing that this isn't I win or I lose, or you win or you lose, this is about, we can do a win-win. We can do this together, but we do have to oftentimes identify a common enemy and get on the same page there first. Then we can proceed through whatever the actual issues are. And at that point, those items become a little more tactical rather than emotional. And I think that leads to a great chance of success for a better outcome.
Yeah,
I agree. And I think something I want to add, I believe that the enemy wants us to feel like we're in isolation. If we feel isolated and we are just drowning in that and we want to give up, and what does it matter? But I think we're called to community, and Christ calls us to that. And in that community, we can rise up and we can be profitable. We can steward this land the way that God designed us to be able to do it. We are the hands and feet, and we need that kind of collective community to lift each other up and to cheer each other on, and just to let people know that you're not alone and we can do this together. Even if we're not in the same physical space, we can ask the right questions, we can have good conversation, and we can mentor each other to try different things that bring life to the land and to our relationships, to our families, and to our businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty, right? And ultimately Jesus is the bondage breaker, and we have to go to him to get that done. But I do think that there are varying degrees of freedom, and we can experience that freedom from being in that victim mentality just by recognizing that I do have the ability to make a different decision here, and the enemy isn't the person that I'm in conflict with. It's this common whatever it is that we're facing, whether it's a spiritual attack or just drought or financial stress or markets that are, less than what they could be, or whatever it is. We have to recognize we're all here to deal with that issue rather than fighting each other. I think that's a huge, huge, regardless of where you fall, as far as your allegiance to Jesus is concerned, just recognizing that shift in looking at problems as the problem rather than the person as the problem.
Yes, definitely.
I think the other thing, though, that comes to my mind from that is that we shouldn't beat our head against the wall necessarily and keep nagging people to get them to see things the way that we think they need to see them. Sometimes we need to just invite that other voice in to say, hey, this is, for them to make the presentation and then the light bulb to come on. Because even in my life, I've spoken in front of groups that we're used to hearing from someone who's a better communicator and a more knowledgeable communicator than I am. But when I say it the way that I've just become used to saying it, they'll hear it from me and they'll respond. And it's like, it wasn't about me. It was just about a different voice saying the same thing. So I think that sometimes we need to stop beating our head against the wall, trying to get people to see things the way we think they should, and just say, hey, let's get out into a different environment and hear it from a different perspective. Have you seen that be true?
Yes, absolutely. We encourage people to invite each other into learning opportunities, into workshops. And I think something that we realized early on when we started doing this is so many people, they don't invite because they think the answer is already going to be no. And so we have these conversations where we say, okay, but if you assume the answer is going to be no, then you don't invite them. And if you don't invite them, then you are taking their choice away. So they can say no, and they have the right to say no, but they also have the right to say yes. But if we don't invite people to be a part of the conversation, if we don't invite them to come sit at the table, if we don't invite them to that workshop or to that conference or to that retreat, then they don't have that opportunity to say yes or to say no, and we're taking their choice away. So if we can shift our thinking into inviting and being inclusive, we always need to respect that they have the right to accept or to decline, but at least we've given them that choice.
One example of that is, well, hits right at home for us is we moved back to the ranch here that I grew up on, and we're the fourth generation on this ranch, but we moved back here in 2016. But for 13 years before that, I had worked for NRCS and for local soil conservation districts. I also worked for the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition as their executive director. And of course, I had tremendous mentors and friends and that sort of thing in those organizations that would provided leadership to me. But one of the things that I did not realize was really beneficial is through all those years, I continued to invite my father to come to those events. And I'm talking about soil health events and holistic management schools and tours and grazing workshops and those sorts of things. And by doing that, he came to those simply based on an invite. But then he got to hear all of this type of information from other individuals, many times individuals that would be more in his peer category based on generation and age and stage of career. He didn't need to hear those things from me. And by doing that, we could have conversations without his 20 and 30 something year old. And of course, I'm beyond that now, but 20 and 30 something year old son who, here, we should do this. We should do this. We've been doing it wrong all these years. We've taken the approach of what did you hear and what's your opinion? Mm-hmm. And then we bounced that back and forth. And we did that for years until we finally decided to move back here to the ranch, which, by the way, we said we would never do. We actually committed to each other that we would never move to the ranch, a family ranch in rural North Dakota. But I think based on our experience and the mentorship that we had, we were able to ask questions, invite people, and provide opportunities for others, including ourselves, that we wouldn't have before. And it led to the ability to hear things from other people, which I think is really, really underrated.
Yeah, for sure. That's very good. And, I think to go along with that, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It's probably a bumper sticker or cliche or whatever, but it's true. So if you don't invite, the answer is always going to be no. But if you do, you never know. You might catch them on the right day, and maybe that right day is a high degree of openness, and they're open to hearing what they go hear that day too. So I mean, it's you just gotta invite when the opportunity presents itself. Were there anything else? Was there any other specific breakthroughs that you saw that you think translate to a broader audience as well?
I don't know if this is so much a breakthrough, but more of an aha moment, which is a discussion that we have with the class or the group on a daily basis, but identifying the challenge of coming to an event like this, but not bringing your spouse or your business partners or whichever other generation you might be working with. Because Clay, if you've been to, and I know you've been to some of these events, you come home with lots of ideas, you come home with some energy, and it's not even so much purely the content that you heard, but it was the people that you networked with, the environment that you were in and surrounded with, the energy that you felt. And there's really no way to replicate that when you get back home, even if you are a really good communicator. So the aha moment for a lot of these individuals, probably by day 2 or day 3, was simply that I wish they were here.
Yeah.
If they were here and they could hear this, number one, they didn't have to hear it from whoever they're in contact with daily. But secondly, they get to experience the energy and the environment and the safe space that we work to create in our retreats in our schools. And just that experience then oftentimes lifts people and empowers them in ways that even they didn't realize they maybe had inside them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that it also goes back to that accountability piece, right? That we know every one of us can name people, and we've been there ourselves, where you go to a camp, you go to a retreat, you go to a class, a course, a seminar, and you'd come home all excited with those deals, and then that excitement wanes, and the tractor's got a flat tire, and the blizzard hits, and whatever else, and okay, we're back to the status quo. Whereas if you've got that accountability, then they can spur you on to sticking to some of the commitments that you were ready to make coming out of the class, right?
Yes, I think you absolutely spoke to what so many people experience. And you come home from that conference high or that workshop high, and it fizzles out. And then sometimes some people even tend to feel a little bit worse because the expectation was so high that you're going to come home and make all these changes and get them all implemented. But then when you don't, it just feels like there's that much more of a gap. So that's why Joshua and I have worked hard that after our schools and in between events, that we stay connected to people with opportunities to be a part of accountability groups, to be a part of our mastermind groups. We're going to be, spoiler alert, we're going to be starting up some facilitation opportunities too, just again, because we see the need and we experience it too. We come home and we experience and we feel those same things. And so we love to practice what we preach. And if we see that there's a need and there's a gap in us being successful, whether it's grazing planning, whether it's biological monitoring, whether it's getting our books done so we make sure that these enterprises are profitable, we need that kind of accountability for ourselves. And so we want to offer that to others so that we all win. We all want to win with this and steward creation and do it successfully.
Yep.
I think the last thing I would add to that is just simply some of the breakthroughs for people is when they realize that they don't have to sacrifice one thing to gain another thing, that there's actually a harmony or a rhythm that can be developed. In other words, in order to be profitable, it doesn't mean that the land needs to be, doesn't need to be sacrificed. Or in order to, put together a great management program for your business, that it has to sacrifice quality of life. Now, does that mean that any one thing is going to be maximized? Probably not, but that's really not what we're looking for. We're looking for that optimization of a harmony and a rhythm that is based within the context and the goals of that particular family or that particular business unit. And to watch people come to that conclusion that they don't have to choose winners and losers when it comes to their business model, that was really a big item for a lot of people as well.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, C90 Ocean Minerals. C90 Ocean Minerals, the leading mineral and trace element sea salt for your herd, is now available nationwide at Tractor Supply Company. We're excited to bring the incredible benefits of our mineral-rich sea salt to more farmers and ranchers across the country. To find your closest Tractor Supply location, visit us at c-90.com/tractor today. Trouble with flies? Select stores also carry C90 mineral salt with garlic for fly control. Learn more today at c-90.com/tractor. Let's talk a little bit about your own personal operation and kind of, you mentioned coming back to the ranch in 2016, and then also the uniqueness and the piece of both of you being there, full-time, involved, business partners. Let's talk a little bit about that. Can you tell me a little bit about how that all came to be?
Sure. In about 2013, we were living outside of Bismarck at that time, and had two kids at that time. And both Tara and I realized that we were just a bit discontent. We weren't where we thought we should be, and we just started to question, are we living where we want to be? Are we able to serve the way we want to serve? Are we achieving the quality of life that we're after? And we just kept coming up with either a no answer or a question mark. And in the end, that conversation led us to, well, where else can we go? What does it look like? And really the why question that we started asking on a number of things, why is that the case? What are we missing? And so many of the goals that we had set for ourselves about how we wanted to raise our kids, what type of community we wanted, those sorts of things were just not being achieved. And like I had mentioned earlier, we had committed to not putting the family ranch that I was raised on here near Hazen, North Dakota. We had committed that was not going to be one of the options. And I think that was a safe space for us to consider years before when we decided to get married. But so many things had changed at that time, the way that we viewed soils, the way that we viewed food, the way that we viewed health and quality of life and all those things. And so a lot of that changed. So we started the process then and finally got moved here in the spring of 2016. It was traditionally a cow-calf operation, although if you go back enough generations, you would find some more diversity. But we've expanded that over time to include stockers as a part of our business. Grass finishing has become an enterprise. We have hair sheep on our operation as well. And then the educational piece that I'll let Tara talk a little more about was something we had done for years back before we moved to the ranch. But I will tell you, it intensified when we moved to the ranch, and the perspective that the ranch gave us was, well, let's just say it was very real world. I mean, it took what we had talked about for so long and had only been able to practice in very limited amounts. We now were able to put on full display. And does this work? Does it not? And what role do we have in all of this? So our operation, like I said, has expanded. It has grown. It has evolved. We have had some extreme challenges in the process. Some of those are circumstantial, like drought or markets or weather in general, blizzards, etc., things that you had brought up earlier, Clay. But we honestly realized that much of what we were dealing with was less about those external factors and more about our internal leadership and ability to respond to those things or be proactive in the first place.
I would like to interject by saying I love that Joshua called our situation, we were discontent. I would say if we were to write a book about this, this would be the chapter. When we decided to move to the ranch, it would be the chapter where we felt like we were drowning. We absolutely were in over our heads just with some health challenges. We struggled with infertility, and we were blindsided by that. We were struggling with learning, just we were disconnected from our food supply enough to where we weren't thinking about food and what we needed for our bodies for that optimal health. And I did not grow up on a farm or a ranch, and I am not ashamed to admit that back then I did not think at all about what a cow was eating and how that impacted the cow's diet. I wasn't thinking about, I mean, I understood the food web and, what ate what, but I didn't really think in depth about how much soil health and the biology of the soil microbes. I didn't think about what that meant for growing grasses and everything that grows on the land, and then all of the creatures, livestock. I didn't think about what they were eating and how it affected their physical health, and then how that would affect the human diet. So I became very passionate about the human diet and what we're eating and why it matters. And so we were on this journey to be intentional about what we were eating and about how land was stewarded. And at the time too, we just, our situation was we had a lot of financial bills. We had a child who was very sick and had a lot of medical interventions. And so it was just this kind of overwhelming feeling of, we had our financial bills kind of piling up. I left my job to stay home with the kids, and so we were short our income. I was feeling very, very isolated. Joshua was traveling quite a bit with our education side of the business, and we were lacking community. So we just, our quality of life goals that we had set for ourselves, that we wanted community and we wanted access to healthy food, and we wanted to raise our kids in an environment that was mentally, physically, and spiritually healthy. We realized that we were drowning. We just weren't succeeding the way that we believed God was calling us to. And so definitely when we teach in our schools how to do that vision planning, how to set those goals, or to set that holistic context, we really talk about our values, and we talk about what it is that we want, and we focus on the things that we do want. And as soon as we recognize that we are attracting the things that we don't want, we become proactive, and we
pivot.
Yeah, we pivot and we course correct, and we say. So, I mean, there was one specific day that Joshua came home from work, and we looked at each other, and we both just knew. We said we need to move back to the family ranch, and that is where we can find the community that we want, and that is where we can grow the food and have influence over what the cows are eating, for example. And what really resonated with us, because again, I didn't grow up on a farm or a ranch, but I have an English background. My job prior to us being blessed with children was I taught at a middle school language arts, and I taught writing classes. And so I really loved words and marketing and branding, and so that's where I know this is an audio, so you can't see our symbol, but this is where our name and our symbol really became part of our ministry and our mission statement. So we named our business, and is now the name of our ranch, Seek First Ranch. And it is for two reasons that are really, really important to us. Number one, it's after the Matthew 6:33 Bible verse. We needed to learn for ourselves how to surrender. We were trying to do things in our own timeline. Very, very, we weren't intending to be selfish. We didn't think that we had selfish desires, but we really realized that we needed to surrender to God's will for us, and He would show us the way. And so that seeking first God's kingdom and God will provide resonated with us, and we internalized that. And so seek first the kingdom is the first reason why we named our business what we did. And the second reason is because we believe in the power of asking questions. We will not get the answers that we are looking for if we are not asking the right questions. And so we believe that the type of questions that we ask and the depth of our willingness to question things that is really truly what drives us and motivates us and get us headed into the direction that we need to be. So when we combine those two, for us, when we're seeking first God's kingdom and when we're asking the right questions, God has taken us so far, so fast with this business model and with this ministry. And so it's something that we've found so much value in doing what we're doing and learning what we've learned. We have tremendous mentors, and we believe in this leadership cycle of paying it forward. So people have and continue to mentor us. We continue. We think everybody needs a mentor, multiple mentors. And if you have mentors who don't have mentors, I have a friend who says, find a new mentor. So we have great mentors in our lives and great things that we surround ourselves with, great podcasts, great educators, great community members who can continue to model things for us and be willing to talk about what they're doing that's working and what they're doing that's not. And we strive to do the same thing very transparently so that we can pay it forward and share our journey with others.
Yeah. Like that asking questions piece, right? Seek first to understand before you seek to be understood, right?
Yeah,
listening is a really important piece of this. And that was actually another breakthrough that someone shared with us while we were in Texas that they had was oftentimes, we're seeking, we're listening, but we're only listening to respond. But the whole idea of listening to understand first carries so much weight and can give so much more traction to any conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. Both of you alluded to it throughout that portion that soil health essentially is what drew you back to the ranch. And I think that, you hear, I think probably the first person I heard talk about it was Dave Pratt said that the ranch is just a collection of jobs and assets. And for me growing up, all I saw was the work. I didn't see the asset at all. I didn't care about it at all. All I knew was that we worked a lot and we didn't have a weekend like all my friends in town did. And I was a little bit lazy, so I resented that. And so, but what drew me back, what lit the fire in me, what will probably keep me an agriculturalist until I die is soil health. That's what, when I recognized, there's way more going on here and we can positively, this land can get better and better and better. And I've talked to a lot of experts over the years, and not one of them will tell you they found the upper limit of how good land can be. People have been doing this some people have been doing this for nearly 50 years now, and it's still continuing to, increase and get better. So I think that's interesting, just that soil health piece, maybe it's just interesting to me because I resonate with that of soil health drawing you back to the ranch.
Yes.
So you've got a school coming up in Fort Pierre. Again, I think a pretty unique opportunity to have both of you there teaching the school and get that perspective from just a husband-wife team and all that brings to it. So can we talk a little bit about that? What are the dates? And as I said, it's in Pierre, South Dakota. Just talk to me a little bit about the school that's coming up.
We are so excited to come back to Pierre. The dates are November 19th through the 21st. It's our 3-day Regenerate School, and we love the 3-day format because one of the number one things that we hear people say when we meet resistance is, I can't leave the farm or ranch for that long. I can't leave for 5 days. I can't leave for 6 days. I can't leave for a week. So we've done this 3-day window because I think we hit the sweet spot because we get people who are willing to leave, but also we think that you need to be able to unplug for at least that amount of time to really engage in the process and to open up our minds to different kinds of conversations, look at our operation from a bird's eye view. What are we doing that is working financially, biologically, and in our relationships? And what are we doing that needs improvement? So we think that sweet spot of the 3 days is it's long enough where we can unplug from our own operations and dive in and experience what this 3-day school holds, but also not be so long that people are hesitant to commit, because we know time, everything for people is time and money. So we'd also like to thank the South Dakota Grasslands Coalition for sponsoring this, because they have made it so affordable for people. They are covering the vast majority of the cost for this. So we can give you the link to register, Clay. I'm sure you'll include that, but they are covering the majority of the cost of this so that people are not limited by that factor.
There really is no great time to be gone from the ranch or the farm. I mean, most of the time, we've had this conversation for years and years about what time of year do we do events? What time of the year should we do this so that people aren't, not busy, but maybe just a bit less busy. And we've come to the conclusion that if you want to find something or you need a reason to stay home, it's pretty easy to find one. But we've tended to try and take a different approach to this. And this isn't some sort of just tactical training that you come to. This is an investment in the future of your family and your business. And for us, events like this, we go to a lot of events like this ourselves where we're not facilitator teaching, but we are going because we want to invest in our family and our business. And that's part of the leadership piece, really. One of the things that I was missing for many years was yeah, we're a couple, yes, we're a team, but what parts do I need to step up and provide leadership in? And this is one of those opportunities for people to do this. Because we focus quite heavily on the relationship piece, but we tie it into the biological piece and the financial piece, because again, we're looking for that harmony or that rhythm between those three. We think that we believe that we are filling a void that is really, really critical out there and needs attention. And so we have designed our regenerative schools and retreats around those particular pieces with that particular emphasis.
If I can add something else that I think is really unique. Again, this is us being transparent and practicing what we preach. We believe that everyone adds value to the conversation and everyone desires to be heard. And we think everyone deserves to be heard. And we happen to be a homeschool family. And we use that term because people usually people understand what that means. But we like to say what we do is life learning. We are not limited to home, and it doesn't look like school. It looks like real world living. And so we have the opportunity with our kids now are 12, 11, and 6. And we tend to bring them along with us, at least the older two, when we have the opportunity to go to places that are within driving distance for us, because we want our kids to be absorbed into these conversations. And we love to have all ages be present and at our schools. So of course it's parent discretion, but we love to have youth join us in the schools. We want ages all the way up till, 125 if you can live to be that old. We just believe that everybody brings value and their perspective and their wisdom. We think, the older generations, they have all kinds of wisdom and skills that they've gleaned over the years. And then you've got your youngest of population that's tremendous at asking really good questions. And so we've designed our schools to be very family friendly and incorporate all ages.
Several years ago, South Dakota actually set the precedents or maybe even set the bar when we opened this up to 12 years old and older, and it might have even been a bit younger than that. But we had several families at one school in South Dakota that brought that young generation. And we heard many, many comments at the end of people who initially were a bit hesitant to how that was going to work in these business conversations and these mature conversations. But honestly, in the end, most of them commented that was actually really valuable. They brought an energy and value to those conversations that I don't think would have been there otherwise. Not to mention some appropriate entertainment value that came with some of those activities, because we're very interactive with our schools. It's very much a participatory type of experience. We do absolutely everything we can to not sit and do death by PowerPoint, because we think there's plenty of other opportunities out there to get those pieces. And so the interactive piece for us is really, really important. Having a memorable experience so that when they leave, it is not their notes that drive their next actions, their next steps. It's the experience that they had.
Yes, we do some soil test demonstrations. We run through some financial examples, but like Joshua said, it's very hands-on, it's very interactive, it's very engaging. It's not a sit in death by PowerPoint kind of school.
And oftentimes in those types of activities, including some communication ones that we do, again, it's not us telling you what you should have gotten out of that. Mm-hmm. It's realizations that people have along the way, which is by design, and then they take it and they run with it.
Yeah. And everybody comes back with their own ahas, and they're real. And those are those breakthrough moments where they realize, oh, this is what this means, or I had no idea that was possible, or I'm going to go back and I'm going to experiment with these acres, whether it's a different grazing method, or if it's a different planting method, or whatever that looks like. It's just so fun to spark these different ideas and have these kinds of conversations that lead people to push themselves outside of their comfort zones with that limited kind of thinking.
Early on in each of these schools, we do a number of activities that help us get to know who's there, what their background is, what their outcomes that they're trying to achieve is. That's very, very important. But the other piece, kind of a chess piece that this gives us in these schools, we don't know all the answers. I don't know that anybody does, but we are so excited to be able to basically facilitate the discussion to help one participant help another participant, mm-hmm. and keep that particular lines of communication open, because when they leave that school, there's a better chance that they're going to communicate with their peers that they attended with than they will necessarily communicate with us directly. So we're in the process of building a support group and an accountability group the whole time that we're together.
Yeah, it will be in the show notes page for today. It's real simple, though. sdgrass.org. Click on the events tab. It's right there. But it'll be in the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/390. Workingcows.net/390 is the show notes page for today. And it's taking place at Richie Z's Brick House Barbecue. And for some reason, it is the 6th rated place to eat in Pierre, but I ate at 3 of the 5 places above it on the list, like within the last 6 months, and I wouldn't put any of them above it. So maybe that's just because I've got a soft spot in my heart for barbecue. But it is don't sleep on that as a event venue. Good place to eat.
Good. Sure. Yeah. Food is so important. Food is such an integral part of the schools too. So many of the best conversations happen at meal times.
Yep.
And so, yes, I'm glad to hear that it is at a place that serves good food. So we've got a lot to look forward to.
Right. And also, I think it's normally $1,000 per attendee. The South Dakota Grassland Coalition's paying $850 of that for members of the school. For members of the coalition, I think brings the cost down to $150, and the coalition membership is $30 a year. So, I mean, people outside the state, I'm sure, are welcome to travel in for it, and definitely worth the trip, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Well, and after the school, there's such a great resource with the South Dakota Grasslands Coalition that whatever direction you need to go, or whatever stage you're at in the journey, you're not alone. I mean, there are resources abound, and it can start right there.
Yeah. We talked earlier in this podcast about isolation, feeling isolated, and we do not want that to happen to folks. So we want you to be connected to community. So whenever we do a school, usually it is hosted by a certain entity. Again, in this case, it's South Dakota Grasslands. And so we will keep you connected to them. You can always stay connected to us. For those of you who are not in the South Dakota area, or this time frame doesn't work for you, you can absolutely check out our upcoming events. Our website is seekfirstranch.com. seekfirstranch.com, and we've got a page dedicated directly to upcoming events. We have a page that has podcasts on it. So Josh's last podcast with you, Clay, is still up there. And we are so looking forward to continuing to connect with people either at the South Dakota school or beyond, because we see so much value in what it brings.
Yep. And we're a homeschool family as well. And we just count these days as like, well, that we're going to do some homeschool science in the morning when we talk about soil health. And we're going to do some homeschool math in the afternoon when we talk about finding out if you're profitable or not. And, we're going to do some homeschool language arts as we talk about communication, so I think that those are all, bring the family. It'll be a great time. So, yeah, I think the school sounds like a great opportunity. I really appreciate the, interactive nature that you guys are talking about, and some of those things, not being death by 1,000 PowerPoints. That's really good. But where do we go from there? You leave the school. We've talked about that already somewhat on the accountability. How are you guys trying to kind of fill some of those gaps for people as far as helping them once the school's over?
Yes, we are boots on the ground kind of people. And so when we leave the school, we encourage everyone to say out loud to the group at least one thing from their action step list that they are committing to complete within the next 7 days. And so when we leave the school, they receive an email or a follow-up from me to just check in. Hey, how's that going? Were you able to complete that? And then as an option for people, because we want them to stay connected into a community, we are offering some mastermind groups. We are offering some accountability groups, and these are going to take place via Zoom. So everybody can participate from the comfort of their own home. It's each one is set up a little bit differently, but it's usually about once every couple of weeks we do a check-in and keep everybody accountable and moving forward in the direction that they have decided that they want to go. It also helps just with this because it's a group setting. It's a safe space for people to ask questions and also to hear feedback from all these different perspectives from people on the call in the group. And so it's a really nice balanced community it's easy enough for folks, so they don't have to travel to get there. It's usually an affordable way for them to continue moving forward. And then the other thing that we find that so many people ask us about is, okay, I'm here. I've just had this great 3 days. I now need to go back and I need to explain this to my team. And I don't know that they are ready to do vision planning or goal setting, or I don't know that they're going to be ready to talk about this. How do I have these conversations? Because when we as families and teams try to play the facilitator role, but also be in a position where you're sharing your opinions, it's just a really, really difficult, cumbersome, and kind of an awkward space for people to be a player and a referee. So some families fully admit, hey, we've got conflict. And others are like, it's not necessarily that we have conflict. It's just that we just are not having these kinds of conversations, and that's what's holding us back.
They might just not have a clear direction about where they would like to go.
So we're in the process of bringing back our facilitation opportunities for people, and that it might be the best fit to do an in-person, everyone sit around the table, or again, we don't want travel to be a limiting factor for people, so we can offer those facilitation opportunities over Zoom as well. But we want to make sure that it's the right fit for people. So if you go to our website now, you won't necessarily see the option for facilitation, but you can get in touch with us, get a hold of us, and we will have the conversation, because it needs to be something that we see as a benefit to them, because everybody's time is precious, money is precious. And so we want to make sure that it's the right fit. We also, like Joshua mentioned before, we're very outcome based. So we want to be very clear on what the outcome is, whether it's an accountability group or a mastermind or facilitation opportunity, so that we are making sure that we are meeting those outcomes and people are getting moved in the direction that they want to go.
With the masterminds, are those school specific? So each school that you guys have been instructors at has its own mastermind group? Is that how that works?
We are doing a combination of groups. So it does not need to be specific to that. we kind of take a break of doing those in the summer, but we'll be starting some more after this next South Dakota school. We'll get some more accountability and mastermind groups coming, but we know sometimes people just tend to, if you go to our website, you will see there's an opportunity to look into accountability groups and masterminds. And so if you get in touch with us through the website on that, I will respond back to you with what our current options are.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds very good. Well, anything else that you want to share, or anything else you feel like needs said here before we point towards wrapping up?
No, I think everything it's on our list. We've covered. I think it's just simply, it's hard to explain, just the breakthroughs and the experience that people have. And we have this on a regular basis when we go, especially if we go together to different events, but we try and replicate that as much as possible. And of course, every class is unique, and we play to those strengths and try to achieve the best possible outcome we can. And honestly, at the end of the school, if we feel energized and exhausted at the same time, we know that there's probably some good things that happened.
Yeah, as I look back on my experience with my first class, the one that kind of started it all was the High Plains Ranch Practicum. And going into that, I thought at best we were going to get some business, we're going to learn how to keep track of numbers. That might have been as deep as I had thought about it, and probably what I imagined, all of the days of the school being about. But that was, that was a small percentage of it. And the vast majority of it, at least what stood out to me at that time, the vast majority of it was managing the land and the soil health part of that conversation, and then the people, and actually the fact that if we get our grazing right, that's one of the bigger levers we can push on, but then also the people management side of it and managing those relationships. And so, yeah, I think it's way more than what people think it is. And so go in with an open mind, and there's just almost limitless potential for improving the quality of life and the impact of your business if you're willing to approach it with that mentality, right?
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, very good. Joshua, Tara, thank you guys for your time today. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Very good stuff there with Joshua and Tara. Really appreciate their perspective and the way that they think about these things. Also had a really good conversation with them for some bonus content that will be up at patreon.com/workingcows if you're interested in that. And that will probably become a full-blown episode at some point because it was just that good of an outline. And it also matches up with a event that they're doing in January in Montana, Miles City, Montana, with Eastern Montana Regenerative Agriculture. They're doing an event up there on leadership and communication, and that's kind of what we talked about in the Patreon bonus content. So if you're interested in that, patreon.com/workingcows, you can find content there. I think we just crossed 150 episodes of bonus content. So the value proposition of patreon.com/workingcows continues to get better and better for the bonus content level. So don't sleep on that opportunity. Coming up next on the Working Cows podcast, I'm going to try, I said, I think at the outro of last week's episode that I was going to have an episode with John Moody on fighting mandatory RFID. He's got an event coming up in Texas, and I want to get the word out about that as well. So I'm going to try this Friday to get a bonus episode out with John Moody on fighting mandatory RFID. So look forward to that coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you then.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.